What is good, friends? Today is a special fucking video because I was reminiscing on my childhood when I used to do something called the Amazon Challenge. And what the Amazon Challenge is pretty much a guarantee that you can go to any product on Amazon.com and find somebody that's giving it a 1-star rating for the stupidest fucking reason. And it was always true. It didn't matter what you looked up. You could look up a shot glass and somebody's giving it a 1-star review because I got drunk and dropped it and fell on it and it broke. It's not up to my personal quality standards. And now as an adult man with a job and bills and a house and a car and 2 dogs, I wanted to see if I could do the Amazon Challenge, but on Metacritic. And what better way to start off than with Sonic fucking Frontiers. Now, for those of you that don't know or aren't willing to admit, Sonic Frontiers changed the public perception of Sonic for the better. Now, there are some fans that have like some genuine gripes with the game and issues that they would like to see fixed in the sequel, but there are also some people that review bombed the game a day after release or just straight up yap. And you know how we do on this channel. I love me a good yapper with no basis for their argument. That's kind of my shit. That's what I do. So today we're gonna look through all of these Metacritic scores. Now I'm only going for zeros because that's the worst score you can give it. It's out of 5 stars on Amazon. It's out of 10 on Metacritic. So we only want zeros. 2s and 1s get skipped. Zeros get reviewed if it's in a language that I can properly speak or understand. And we're just gonna take it off. So we have first 0, a day after the game released, is from Sonic Fan 14. That's Portuguese. I don't speak that, so we're gonna be skipping over it. We scroll up a little bit higher. We have Hot Chip Denier, who dropped his review after 1 day, or I'm sorry, that's released, no, 1 day after the game releases. And obviously that's enough time to have played the game and understand it on a fundamental level. So let's just see what he has to say, or she. This game is mad dookie. It should have been in development for 2 more years. I'm so tired of game companies rushing their development teams to release games that show so much potential only for them to be released looking like an early access beta with bugs and glitches. This game would get a 6 from me normally, but I'm done being lenient with lazily released games. The whole game can be described as unrefined. The open world is just big and bland with random assets placed everywhere, like rails and platforms. I could totally have seen this game becoming something special with real effort, love, and time, but unfortunately it's dookie. If you want a good Sonic game to play or take notes from Sega devs, take notes from Sonic Utopia and Sonic Omens. The racism game and Forces 2.1 is what this person thinks that Frontier should have taken notes from. Oh boy, off to a roaring start. Brian J 1992, game is boring and repetitive. It's just a bunch of automated set pieces in the air that gives you a collectible that makes you feel like you've done something when you really haven't. And when you're on the ground, it's just flat or janky terrain. It's fun to move around for a little bit, but it gets old fast. Combat is also pretty mindless. It's just mashing a button and then occasionally spamming a special move. I find it very repetitive. A lot of the puzzles feel like they're made for babies and the story was just confusing and underwhelming. I don't really recommend playing this game. It's very aimless in design. Again, day after review. So let's just dissect this one a little bit because these are the types of reviews that I like to look at because it's a valid point that's delivered in hyperbole in order to like kind of extrapolate the real underlying issue. The game is boring and repetitive. That's an opinion. I can't tell you, hey, this game isn't boring or repetitive. I didn't feel it was boring or repetitive, but you know, if you feel that way, that's fine. It's a bunch of automated set pieces in the air that gives you a collectible that makes you feel like you've done something when you really haven't. And when you're on the ground, it's just flat or janky terrain. The set pieces, not all of the set pieces are automated. So that's not really a thing you can say, but like I get it if you feel like you don't have enough control in the air with the platforming, that's on you. When you're on the ground, it's just flat or janky terrain. I don't know how else to make terrain in an open game. I mean, most terrain in the real world is either flat or mountainous or valleys. Janky, I guess. I have 130 hours on this game, and I've fallen through the game once, and that's because I was trying to break the game or see how far I could get into the game. So I hit like the outer bound and tried to do a drop dash on the corner of a mountain near a lake, and I fell through the map. Other than that, I've never encountered any like gameplay glitches with that. Combat is pretty mindless. It's just mashing a button and then occasionally spamming a special move. Newsflash for you, buddy. That's like most games that aren't fighting games. Like Devil May Cry is like, if we're gonna be that reductive, Devil May Cry is a 2-button game because you have your attack button, which is usually square, and your guns, which are circle unless you remap them. You have a launcher button in triangle. I play on PlayStation. You have a launcher button in triangle and jump on X, but for the most part, you can find success in that game by hitting square and changing directions and then doing a special move. That's a very reductive way to look at combat games, because I mean, like, what the fuck else? what else would they do for the combat? A lot of the puzzles feel like they're made for babies, and the story was just confusing and underwhelming. The puzzles feeling like they're made for kids is kind of valid. I mean, if you've been playing games for a minute, you can figure these puzzles out pretty much like immediately or with a little bit of work. The overworld challenges is where the real challenge comes from, because some of those can get very difficult in the later stages of each island, and that's where it is. But again, Sonic, the target demographic for Sonic, first and foremost, is people between the ages of like 8 and 13. And then there's stuff in there for everybody else, like long-term fans. So I'm not expecting like OG Resident Evil caliber levels of puzzles. So that's fine. The story was confusing and underwhelming. I think the story was pretty straightforward. Underwhelming, that's an opinion. I'm not gonna argue with you on that. If you feel it was underwhelming, you feel it was underwhelming. Confusing, I can kind of argue that, because Sonic's trapped in a new world and he has to find the emeralds and get out and save his friends. Pretty much any hero's journey. Like, I don't think it's very confusing. Thor Carmine, again, a day after review. While not outright broken like Sonic the Hedgehog 2006 or Sonic Boom wasn't broken, it was just boring as fuck. Sonic Frontiers is a heavily misguided game that muffles good ideas with questionable narrative, technical, and gameplay design decisions. Sonic Team continues to demonstrate that it's not quite sure what to do with the Blue Blur taking a wild swing. I hate that fucking nickname. Taking a wild swing with a game that tries to rival open world games rather than double down on the strengths of newer titles like Sonic Generations and Sonic Mania, or older successes like the Sonic Adventure series. I've said it before and I'll say it again. I am glad that Sega stopped trying to appeal to the fan base, because when they try new things like this happen. It's like, it's not quite sure what to do, taking a wild swing with a game that tries to rival open world games. Sonic Frontiers wasn't released to rival open world games. It's just an open world game set in the Sonic universe. Like, I don't think Sega or Sonic Team was thinking that they were gonna directly compete with things like Horizon or Breath of the Wild. You know, the open world is a formula. It's a genre of game, not exclusive to an overarching narrative, if that makes sense. So like, what I mean by that is any game could technically be an open game if you take the characters and aesthetics and put it in the open world. Like it's not, it's just, it's Sonic, it's a Sonic open world game. Like again, they never said, yeah, we're gonna compete with Horizon. That's not a thing. And then following that, rather than double down on the strengths like newer titles like Sonic Generations or Mania, for one, those are two completely different types of games. 3D boost game, 2D classic game. And again, doubling down on the strengths of those titles, Sonic fans love to say how they hate reuse or like the fact that Sega doesn't try anything new. So why the fuck would they double down on something they've done before if you don't like the new, if you don't like them doing the old stuff? And when they do the new stuff, you call them confused. Again, we became Sonic fans because we liked what Sonic Team did, not because Sonic Team did what we wanted them to do. We are fans of this franchise because there is something that keeps bringing us back. Now that reason is going to be different for everybody, but the blanket to that is that there is enough stuff going on that's good that we stay here. That, at least that's what it is for me. Like, you could never make me hate the Sonic franchise. Like, even I'm willing to call out when there are missteps, when there are outright bad games, or even when there are good games that do some things or have some things in them that I don't enjoy. I'm always gonna do that. But to outright say that this franchise as a whole is trash because it has overall like 4 games that are universally considered bad is insane. They could never make me hate Sonic, bro. That's a 4. We're gonna skip that. Boss Black Rabbit, sadly Sonic Frontiers is a broken mess. The story makes no sense, very repetitive and soulless. Awesome. Sonic Pro, mid, not raw, not peak fiction, oh my mid, Fortnite better. What were they edited ratio? This is obviously a meme and a review bomb. Scroll it up a little bit more. Since the first trailers came out, the negative reviews have not stopped raining. However, when you play Frontiers, it's completely different. Everything makes sense. It is an incredible experience made with lots of love for fans of the Blue Hedgehog. You feel free. There's always something new to discover. It hooks you and you can't stop playing. Definitely the best Sonic 3D in many years. I feel like Joxon CM08 made an error because he or she forgot to rate it, and it just showed up as a 0. So all of these reviews are coming like days after release, when you wouldn't have had enough time to like sit and marinate on what you experienced. And media literacy is at an all-time low, even back 2 years ago when this game came out. So even then, if these people are being serious, like, it's evident in the replies or in the reviews that what was consumed was not digested. That's a bar. Write that down. Write that shit down. So we're actually gonna fast forward in time a little bit to 2024, see if there are any. Oh, we got a new one. So June 6th, a couple of weeks ago, this game is Sega's attempt at finally making a good 3D Sonic game, and they failed. They failed so miserably. When every attempt for the past 24 years fails, just rip off Nintendo. I'm gonna come back to that. This is a buggy mess just like every other 3D Sonic game. That's a blatant lie. The music is uninspired. Cap. Huge cap. The songs in this video are from Sonic Frontiers, and they are widely varied in scope and composition. That's crazy to say that about a Sonic OST. The DLC released later on also makes you play as Sonic's annoying friends, which means that Sega hasn't learned from their mistakes from Sonic Adventure. Wild statement. Lots of people for years have wanted either remasters or a sequel to these games. They loved the variation in the gameplay styles between the characters. Sonic isn't back. Yes, it is. Sonic Mania was just a blip of hope in a sea of despair. You sound like a classic fan. This is spoken and written like a classic fan. But when every attempt in 24 years fails, just rip off Nintendo is insane. I think a lot of people don't really understand that just because Sonic is a platformer doesn't mean that you can just take what other platformers did, slap Sonic on it, and it would be a success. There is nothing that's in Sonic's lane as far as how those games play. There's not another speed-based platformer that is handled at the size and scope of the Sonic franchise. There are some fun fan games. There are some good fan games, like Spark the Electric Jester is really good, but all that does essentially is take bits from Sonic Adventure 2 and add combat sections into it, and that's it. Like, for the most part, a lot of the fan games just take the assets and ideas that were in the core games, tweak the physics, and then reship it out. And people love my favorite phrase, oh man, another game that the fans had to fix, or the fans did better than Sega. I mean, yeah, it's really easy to do a game when 99% of the work was done for you, fam. But either way, I'm gonna do a couple more of these. Pele Salamanca. The difference between Sonic Frontiers and Rubbish is the smell. Worst Sonic game I play in my whole life. All right. We got some 4s, we got some 3s. Pello Team. Sonic Frontiers is an open world game, but I think it's very boring to play with. The characters are bad made and the bosses were too easy in my opinion. You could have just stopped it here and I wouldn't have said anything. Like, if you think the game's boring, you think the game's boring, whatever. The characters being bad and the bosses being too easy. Again, if you've played games for any modicum of time, you could figure out how to beat these bosses. And a lot of this complaint was really addressed in the Final Horizon, because there were people on my timeline in tears because they couldn't complete the Master King trial, or they were doing the platforming challenges with the towers and they were just absolutely getting cooked. I succinctly remember getting blocked by somebody. I'm not gonna say her name, but I got blocked on Twitter because somebody was complaining that it was too hard, and I just said, literally all I said was, if it's too hard, you could switch it to easy, and the platforming challenges are basically like baby mode, and that was enough to get a block from her. So like, shout out to her. Hope she's doing good. Hope you eventually beat the game. But like, there are difficulty options in both the Final Horizon and the base game. That's in Spanish, not reading that. Jackson M. Very boring, nothing much from nearly any other Sonic game. The reason for the rating is because how boring and repetitive it is. Again, if it's boring and repetitive, that's cool. Nothing much from nearly any other Sonic game. No other Sonic game had combat to this degree. The only one you could really bring up would probably be Unleashed, but that was like a whole separate, not a separate mode, but that in and of itself was a separate experience. And again, I've been alive long enough and on the internet long enough to know that y'all hated that game when it came out. Like, people, review outlets were giving it 5s and 6s because quote unquote half the game was good, the day stages, and the other half was a God of War clone. Why that's a bad thing when people were giving God of War 9s and 10s across the board around that time, it will forever befuddle me. But this game is nothing like any other Sonic game at all. And that's gonna do it. That's gonna do it for the videos. I think I've had enough of these, man. I think I'm gonna turn this into a series. I really do. Let me know what y'all thought, man. Let me know what y'all thought about Sonic Frontiers in the comments below. I will definitely look through those, interact with y'all, man. I love talking to y'all. Again, I don't know anything. I'm just a dude with an internet connection. Peace.